I've got a fluffy helper today. This is Flossie. She's 6 years old. She's very adorable. She's getting settled in her new home. Slightly different video today. So I have mentioned before that this top that I'm wearing now is the first top that I ever self-drafted, and actually the only time that I've self-drafted anything thus far. And I self-drafted this top 2 years ago. I wanted to revisit this top with spring, summer coming up. I felt like this top would be a good summer top, and I feel like I have developed my knitting skills since I self-drafted this. So I want to revisit it, and I want to create a new sample of this top. I want to change the style and I want to change the fit. And I thought I would just talk to you about the things that I want to change before I get started. So I had the idea for this peplum top, as I said, 2 years ago, when I feel like peplums were kind of in at the time. And I've noticed in like my high street stores and things that peplums are having a bit of a resurgence. So I thought I would revisit this because a peplum is a shape that I kind of enjoy, although I think I want to do something different with this top. So when I initially drafted this top, it's DK weight. I used 4mm needles, and this is 100% merino wool. I think it's Lamana Como, but I will put it in the description because I always forget whether it's Lamana Como or whether it's Lana Gatto. So my first mistake was using wool. I'm not going to use wool. I'm going to use Sandnes Garn Line, which is linen cotton viscose blend this time around, and I know that yarn works for me. I know I can meet the gauge that I met for this top with that yarn, although I will have to go down to a 3.5mm needle, such is life. That's fine. Anyway, I was working at about a 21 stitch, 32 row-ish gauge, I think, off the top of my head. And I was aiming for something that had a deep V-neck and a short peplum. Couple of issues. You will notice that the V-neck is not that deep. I was kind of conservative with my measurements. I didn't want it to be too deep. I know now that I actually need to go much deeper. So I've got a shallow V-neck at the moment. I want to change that. I want to make sure that's deeper. I've got a fit issue at the moment under the arm. You'll see that the armhole finishes really close to my armpit. I don't want that. It also creates fit problems while I'm wearing it and moving about because I don't know if you'll be able to see, I'll come a bit closer, but fabric kind of bunches here and under the arm, and that's both uncomfortable and unflattering. I think I can rectify both of those issues by adjusting the length of this part of the top. So knitting more before I join the V-neck, because the join for the V-neck and the join under the arms happens roughly at the same point. They're not too far off each other. I also think that reducing the number of stitches here will help across the shoulders. So I initially wanted quite wide shoulders and I want it to be bra friendly for sure, but I think this is too wide and possibly contributing to there being too much fabric here. So I'm going to reduce the number of stitches that are involved on the shoulder here. That will probably involve taking stitches away from these shoulder measurements and adding it to this kind of neck bit here. So I pick up less for the shoulder, but I will have more stitches along the neckline at the back. That will mean there's more to increase in order to join the V-neck at the front. So that will help solve that problem as well. The next problem that I want to solve is obviously this shaping. Now, when I was knitting this top originally, I wanted a short peplum, but I didn't want this kind of bunching. So I clearly grossly misjudged my decreases down the side. I start decreasing here like a few centimeters into the body, into knitting in the round. And my last decrease is right at the bottom, right here. So right at the bottom of this peplum hem. And that was clearly misjudged because I had taken the measurement for my bust, which is my widest measurement, and for my narrowest measurement, which is my waist, which is actually about around my belly button. Obviously, this top does not finish at my belly button, so I seriously did not think that through very well. My belly button is like here, and my jeans start there, so we're already like onto my hips. And that's a problem because that means this measurement here has been taken for the smallest part of my torso, but is actually sitting at one of the wider parts of my body, which is my hips. And that's creating this kind of awkward bunching here. I also stylistically don't think I want to go for this sort of short peplum anymore. A couple of years ago, they're still kind of in at the moment, but kind of dropped waist hems are really in on like dresses and some tops. And I really do like that look, but I just don't think it's the most sensible thing for me to do in my knitting, given that my hips are quite wide. So if I was going to knit something that was form following or form fitting, and was going to sit lower than my natural waistline, I would need to do increases to accommodate my hips. And I don't think that's something I really want to do. So what I think I'm going to do for the peplum instead is start at the shortest, start at the narrowest part of my body, at my waist, around my belly button. So I'm going to shift the peplum line up to here, and then I'm going to do a bigger peplum bottom. The second thing I think I'm going to change about the peplum is the rate of pickup, or the rate of increase, I guess. So when I did this peplum, what I did was I cast off the body and then I picked up double the amount of stitches. So I picked up in every stitch and then I picked up in the gap between every stitch as well. And I think it's probably too much. I'm not sure about this yet. I think I might go for a kind of a shorter pickup rate. So I might pick up in every stitch and then every 2 stitches also pick up in between the stitches. So an increase rate, what's that an increase rate of? I want to increase every 2 stitches, I think. We're going to see when I get there for that bit, because I'm not too sure, because with this being so short, it's really hard to tell how much volume that would give. And I do want it to have some volume, but I don't want it to be extreme. And that brings me to the other overall thing about my fit, which is my ease. So the measurement across my bust on this one is actually a couple of centimetres below neutral ease. So I've actually got a little bit of negative ease on this, and I don't really want that. My body shifts a lot, I get bloated, I want to be comfortable in my tops all the time, and I just don't want a negative ease fit for this particular top. So I'm going to make sure we've got neutral ease across the bust, and then I'm going to try and keep neutral ease down to the waist as well. I also don't want a really drastic silhouette, so I don't want it to be a peplum that's sort of really wide at the top in its silhouette and then really narrow at the waist and then really wide at the bottom. It's not quite what I'm going for. I want something a little more subtle, so that's why I'm not sure about the pickup rate for the peplum. That's also why I want to be a bit more cautious about my ease and also the distribution of stitches up at the top, because I think the shoulders are sitting really wide at the moment. And I don't mind that look, but I think it's a little bit too wide. So I think those are all the things that I want to change. In terms of what I want to keep, oh, actually, one more thing that I want to change is picking up the peplum. So I don't think I'm going to cast off and pick up stitches. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few centimetres of half twisted rib, I reckon, around my narrowest point, around my waist, and then increase, probably not cast off, I'll probably just increase for the peplum at that point. And I think that will also contribute to a less dramatic shape, because instead of going in to one point and then immediately out. There'll be a sort of a curve, a transition. Don't know if I've explained that very well. So that's everything that I want to change. In terms of things that I want to keep, I think I want to keep the I-cord finishings. I'm going to think about that as I go through, but I think I want to keep the I-cord finishings. I'm pretty sure I want to keep kind of the general short row shaping and kind of how I've done the shaping under the arms up here, although I need to work with the stitch numbers a little bit. And obviously the general principle of this design I'm still working with, but there are some big changes that I want to make. So I'm going to document this as I go through. The first port of call is not nicking anything. The first port of call is knitting the back panel, which is the short row shaping for the shoulders, and then just knitting down. I'm going to increase that length a little bit and then doing the increases for under the armholes. And then I will start doing my more major changes when I pick up for these front shoulder pieces here. So I will catch up with you then. So I thought I would just show you where I'm at currently. I started knitting this top a few days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago at this point. And I haven't made loads of progress because I wanted to just check in before I picked up for the shoulders. So this is where I'm at, and this is essentially my back panel. This is the yarn that I'm using. So this is Sandnes Garn Line, and I ordered 2 colours that I could potentially knit this top in, and then whichever one I didn't choose I can just use for another summer top. This is the Lavender Rose colourway. It's really gorgeous. Very happy that I chose it. I think this top will look really, really good in this. So the changes that I've made to the back panel were probably the most minimal changes that I will make. So I have changed the distribution of stitches at the top. So I've increased the number of stitches that belong to the neckline and decreased the number of stitches that belong to each shoulder. That is in part so that I can increase the depth of the V-neck, which is one of the things that I want to do. I haven't gone too crazy with that because I didn't want to recalculate my short rows. Obviously with that change, it means there's less short row shaping at the top because, you know, you start further in, there's less shoulder room to shape, I guess. But not by too much, so I'm happy with that. And I think I did I increase the number of stitches? Potentially, actually, I think I decreased the number of stitches, but only by a couple, because although I want the kind of wide sleeves, I don't want them to be so wide that it makes the fabric sit funny when it gets to kind of under the armpits. And I know in part that will be fixed by increasing the depth of the armhole, but I don't want there to be too much extra fabric here, and I don't think I want to do decreases to compensate for that in order to have that kind of wide capped sleeve. So those are the changes that I've made. I've also made a couple of changes in terms of length, obviously. In order to increase the depth of the armhole, I have increased the amount of length that I knitted by 1 centimetre before doing the increases, and then I think I have potentially added on 1 or 2 increases. I think maybe just 1 increase that I've added on each side, 1 lot of increase repeats to get to the right number of stitches that I need to have neutral ease, but also the right length that I need as well. So I'm really pleased with how this is working up at the moment. I kind of kept the way I worked, my increases, etc., all of that the same. Did my short rows to shape the shoulders and shape the back panel otherwise the same, just with the exception that this short row shaping will make it a little more shallow than it was before, but I don't think that's a particular issue because I think it was quite steep before, and that wasn't an issue either, really. Kind of 6 2/3 to be honest. It's not the thing that I'm most fussed about. So this is where I'm at the moment with the back panel. I'm now going to pick up for the shoulders, so I can't remember which side I'm starting with in my instructions, but I will start with whichever one I initially wrote first and work those through. There are more significant changes to how I've worked the front shoulders and the front panel, because a lot of the changes that I wanted to make were about the fit over around the armpits, over the bust, and with the V-neck. I wanted to make that deeper. So I'm starting with less stitches at the top. That means there's more room for further increases at the bottom where I'm doing the V-neck shaping, which means the V-neck is going to be deeper, but still not too wide, hopefully. We'll see when I work it up what other changes I make. I've written a few changes into my second version of the pattern already, but I think as I go I'll see how much I like those. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to pick up for the shoulders. We're going to see how the V-neck shaping goes. We're going to see how deep it is once I've done that. Once I've done that and joined the V-neck, that's also where I will join in the round pretty much. Those two things happen quite close together, so I think I will sort of provisionally join in the round and see how everything's sitting, how I feel about that. And I will catch up again with you at that point. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. Sorry if you can hear the clanking of needles, I'll try and hold them still. I don't know if I've actually said this in this video yet, but I wrote a pattern for this top the first time that I knitted it. So that's helped with kind of reworking things. And to rework the front panel, I did a bit of maths before I started knitting because I kind of knew the things that I wanted to change. I obviously, as I mentioned with the back panel, I changed the distribution of stitches. So I increased the number of stitches along the neckline here and decreased the number of stitches I was working short rows across. So that obviously meant I decreased the number of stitches on each shoulder here that I was picking up. And that helped to solve the principal problem of this part of the top, which was the depth of everything. Because obviously I had to work more increases before I had the right number of stitches to join the V-neck, and therefore I also worked more rows before I joined the armhole as well, because I didn't change when it joined in the round. So that happened almost immediately after joining the V-neck. Very happy with that. What else did I do? I think that was about it really. I increased the number of stitches I had at the end when I joined in the round, so that I was working towards neutral ease rather than negative ease. And then I did my decreases. So I tried the top on once I joined in the round, and I measured where that was sitting in comparison to the narrowest point in my body. So I measured that depth, and I obviously measured took my waist measurement. So there's about 9 centimeters of difference between my bust measurement and my waist measurement. So I knew that I needed to decrease a number of stitches equal to 9 centimeters. Obviously I've done my gauge swatch already, so I can work that out. So I worked out that I needed to decrease about 20 stitches across a depth of about 13 centimeters, but I was playing a little bit fast and loose with that because I think I've said already I don't want to just decrease to one point and then immediately increase out. I want to do maybe a couple of inches, like a few centimeters of half twisted rib, and then increase out. So I was kind of hedging towards a kind of shorter measurement, I guess. So what I ended up doing is I knitted 1 centimetre of body, which is like a vast difference from the previous top, because I think with that one I knitted several centimetres of body before I actually started doing decreases. This time I only knitted 1 centimetre of body, and then I immediately started doing decreases, and I did them at a much quicker rate as well. So I decreased 4 stitches on every decrease round, which is what I did last time. So 2 on each side, I do them at the side, and I decreased once every 6 rows. So like on every It's not on every 6th row though, it's on every 1st row. And then I knitted 5 rows and then I did another decrease row. You get the point. I'll see if I can show you the decreases. So hopefully you can see the decreases there. They're much more rapid than they were on the previous top. I've actually decreased more than I initially calculated, because when I tried it on, I felt like it needed an extra row of decreases. So I've actually done 6 repeats of that. And I've tried it on and I'm still maybe even a couple of inches off my belly button, but I actually don't think I will be when this blocks, because although this won't grow particularly, it will relax. So I think I've knitted all the length I need to before I do my half twisted rib. However, I'm also aware that the I-cord around the arms and the neckline might cinch things in a little bit, and I might just want to do those before I carry on with the body. So that is my plan. I'm going to do the I-cord around the neckline. I was going back and forth on whether I wanted to do I-cord around the armholes, but actually I think I probably still do. So we're going to stick with that, I think. You'll find out later if I did stick with that or not, I guess, but present me doesn't know. And then I'll be able to get a better sense of how that's going to sit on my body and whether I need to knit any more length before I start doing half twisted rib. So we will see. I think for the I-cord, do I though? I think for the I-cord, I'm going to use the same needle size. Yeah, I think I'm going to use the same needle size because I'm already on a 3.5. And I think I'm going to just pick up like maybe 3 in every 4, something like that. I might pick up one in every stitch across the back and then 3 in every 4, something like that. We'll see. I'm going to just do it and see how it looks. I don't want it to be too tight and too cinching in, but I obviously do want it to tidy everything up a little bit. So we'll do that, we'll see how it goes, and then I will update you. This is where we're at the moment. I'll do you a quick spin. So, I did put the body on pause and then do the I-cord, and I actually, the first time I did the I-cord, I did it, wow, big yawn. Flossie sat next to me, she just did the biggest yawn ever. I did the I-cord with a 3.5mm needle as I'd originally planned, which is what I've used for the rest of the body, and I picked up 4 in every 5 stitches along the back of the neckline, and then I picked up 3 in every 4 along the V-neck, and I knitted the whole thing, and then I decided on reflection after a night's sleep that it was too loose. So I unpicked all of it. I went down to a 3.25mm needle. I did the same pickup rate and I'm much happier with this. You can possibly see that it's cinching in a little bit. I'll come closer. You can possibly see the cinching there, but that's what I want because I know that will block out a little bit. I know this linen will, it doesn't have loads of give, but it will stretch a little bit when it's blocked. I haven't done the armholes because I think what I want to do with the armholes is some twisted ribbing, but really not a lot, just a little bit. And then I think I want to do central decreases under the armholes, like the Alva top by WeMadeWardrobe, which I test knitted last year, and is a really fantastic top, and I like that design feature, so I might try adding that in and see what that looks like. So I tried it on after I'd done the I-cord. I was happy with the length of the body. I decided that I would go to twisted rib, and I did that again in 3.25mm needles, and I wasn't really going for a specific length. I was going for about 5 centimetres of twisted rib, but I didn't want to work towards a specific number because what I wanted to do was make sure it sat nicely around the narrowest part of my body. So I think in the end I worked about 4.5 centimetres of twisted ribbing, and that sits about where I want it to. I'll show you that here. So that's my twisted ribbing at the bottom. And then I didn't cast off or anything, I just increased the stitch count for the peplum hem bottom, I guess. And I initially started by doing knit back and front. No, they're not called that, they're called knit front and backs. Because I thought that would be the most invisible kind of increase potentially, but actually the way it worked out is it sat really weirdly along the ribbing edge, and I just didn't like the look of it, so I actually changed to doing make one lefts, which are not completely invisible but I think sit more neatly along the ribbing edge. And I did a make one left every 2 stitches, so every 2? Yes. So I knit 2, make one left, knit 2, make one left. And I think that's about the right increase number that I want, I guess, to create the volume that I want that's not too dramatic. The last peplum on the bottom of the blue top, when I originally knit this, I did a cast off, but I picked up every stitch and then in between every stitch, so I essentially doubled the number of stitches, and that was quite aggressive, and I don't want that for this kind of fit. So I think it's hard to tell. I think I'm just going to have to keep knitting this until I get to the desired length in order to really find out whether I'm happy with it, which is quite frustrating because if I'm not happy with it, then that means a lot of things to undo. But at the moment, I'm happy with how much extra volume there is at the bottom. Other than that, I don't think I've made any other additions since I last spoke to you. I think what I'm actually going to do now, because I'm at the end of, where is it? Down here maybe? On one of the, oh yeah, there. So I'm at the end of the, there you go, there's my tiny little tail end. I'm at the end of this ball of yarn. So I think before I attach the next one, I'm going to make myself weave in some ends as a form of self-care. So that's what we're going to do. I'm nearly done, but I wanted to show you where I'm at the moment because I've done one of the armholes and I've not done the other. So I think since the last clip that you saw, I have cast off the peplum on the end of the body. Hopefully you can see, I'll come a bit closer. Hopefully, there we go. Hopefully you can see that I haven't done any finishings on the bottom. So in the previous top, the peplum had maybe 3 rounds of garter stitch, something like that. And I decided that I actually didn't want that. I felt like the garter stitch didn't balance out the other features on the top because this is I-cord and this is half twisted rib, and it felt like the garter stitch was kind of just coming out of nowhere. So I went for just a straightforward cast off. And it's rolling a little bit at the moment. It won't roll this much once I've blocked it because I just know this yarn doesn't roll that much, to be honest. It sits quite flat, but it might roll a little bit and that's fine. I think from the last clip you've seen, I knitted about 3 extra centimetres onto this. It was kind of about right for some of my skirts in terms of length, but for some of my trousers and my jeans, not everything I wear is high-waisted, so I wanted it to just fit on all of my bottoms, which it does. And then I did the armholes, so I'll show you the one that I haven't done yet. I wanted to cinch it in a little bit, so this is what I've gone for. I've gone for, as you can probably see here already, I've gone for half twisted rib, and I have done the central decrease under the arm that is in the Alva top pattern by WeMadeWardrobe. So this is absolutely not my own idea at all. Let me show you. Hopefully you can see that central decrease there. I haven't done much ribbing because I didn't want it to be too far under the armpit. And I didn't want this shoulder to be too wide. So I did maybe 5. Yeah, so I did 1 row of 1x1 rib or half twisted rib. And then I did 5 rows of knitting in pattern with the central decrease. And then I just did an Italian bind off. And I started and finished under the arm just because I prefer, even though that makes it a bit more difficult with the central decrease, I just prefer to have my finishings under the arm. So they're sitting at really different heights at the moment, and I think I like how this is sitting at the moment, so I think I'm going to be pretty happy with it when I've done both of them, but we will see. I am so excited to have this done. We're so close. I think when it blocks out, it's got a little bit of elasticity in it at the moment, so I think this will stretch out a little bit. I think it will stretch down, but I still think I don't think it's going to be too low. I think we're going to be good. Yeah, I'm excited. We're nearly done. It's done. I'm so happy with this. Let me give you a little spin so you can see. Ta-da! I'm so pleased. Everything blocked out as I hoped it would. The ribbing eased a little bit. The arms, I was slightly worried about the arms actually when I blocked it. I thought it's not grown enough, but I've worn this for a day now and it's definitely the right depth under there. It doesn't irritate my armpit, but it's also not showing the sides of my bra, so I'm really happy with that. Everything else, the I-cord blocked out really great. I'm just so pleased with it. I'm happy with how much this has uncurled, I guess, which is what I was expecting. But yeah, I'm just so pleased with this. I'm really happy with how everything has turned out and how it was just worthwhile making this again and making the changes that I wanted to. I'm really happy with the depth of the V-neck, which is perfect. It's not too deep that it's inappropriate for work, but it's not shallow like the last one was. I think it looks really good with my necklaces, and particularly I have some necklaces that sit a bit longer. I'm really happy with the width of the shoulders. So these are still wide, but they're not so wide that it's kind of really bunching under here, although I think the solution to that was increasing the depth of the armhole, which I'm also really pleased with. I'm really happy with how the decreases down the side turned out and how the width of the ribbing worked out. I think it all, after blocking, kind of maintains a similar amount of ease from my bust measurement to my waist measurement, which I'm really pleased about. I wasn't so sure whether that was going to work out, seeing as I did the calculations for these decreases, but I kind of winged it a little bit when I started knitting. But it worked out really well, and I'm really happy with the length of this peplum because it does sit nicely on all of the bottoms that I own. And I'm also really happy with how voluminous, I guess, it is. It's not a drastic peplum shape. It's quite subtle, which is exactly what I was going for. Yeah, just really happy about this top. I will put in some close-ups kind of while I've been talking about this, so hopefully you've been able to see some of the details. But I'm just so pleased with this as a kind of first or second, but I guess first attempt at writing my own pattern. And to do this, I definitely pulled a lot from designers that I've already knit from. So I've mentioned WeMadeWardrobe before for the decreases under the arm. I also referenced quite a few petite knit patterns for the short rows on the back yoke and that kind of shaping, and to sort of figure out how that might work. So I feel like I've really learned a lot about construction, and also construction kind of for my body and my particular measurements. So I feel much more confident about amending patterns going forwards, or even kind of drafting things again myself, or making kind of serious modifications to another pattern that's kind of I'm using as a baseline, I guess. Yeah, really pleased with this, so happy. I don't think I'll be knitting another one of these this summer, but you never know. I mean, I do really like it. I wondered what it would look like with sleeves, with just kind of quite a wide sleeve here, but maybe in future. Anyway, thank you so much for following along in this first foray into self-drafting. Let me know what you think about the pattern, about the top, about the design of the top. If you have any tips for kind of self-drafting or modifying patterns, I would love to know. I'd love to learn more about that and kind of get more experience. So if you have any comments at all, please do leave them below. Let me know what you've been working on while you've been watching this video, and if you are playing Yarn Chicken, I hope you win. Bye everyone.